All right, welcome back. This is Dustin again with Southern Apologetics, and today I have another uh, uh, video I want to go through, and I want to look at: is the New Testament telling the truth? Is it reliable? And so there's a couple of questions and there's many ways that we can verify this, but I'm gonna go through it, but there's a couple of questions that we need to look at first, and then we'll start there. So, do we have an accurate copy of the original New Testament documents, and do the original New Testament documents tell the truth? And the answer to both of those is yes, we do. We have very early manuscripts. We have more manuscripts, more accurately copied, and more abundant supported manuscripts that all support one another. Just the New Testament alone contains just under 6,000 manuscript copies. That's just the New Testament. I've not even discussed the Old, but I'm only concentrating on the New Testament because it is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. So if you can show reliability in the New, then you also have reliability in the Old Testament. But going back to the manuscripts, like I said, we have just under 6,000 of them, and the only other document that's even relatively close would be Homer, and he's running 500 to 600, manuscripts. So it's really like what Dan Wallace calls is an embarrassment of riches. And he's the expert in New Testament studies. So if you want to get more into that, his website is the Center for New Testament Studies. He's a teacher at Dallas Theological Seminary, so he would be the guy to really get more in depth with it. But anyways, so being that we have just under 6,000. You have plenty of documents where you can compose and build the original by comparing and looking at different variations of them. So when people say things like the New Testament's been corrupted, usually what Muslims do, it's not true. They're just saying that to justify their own. 43% of 8,000 New Testament verses in manuscripts from the 2nd century. Over 36,000 quotations from early church fathers. Just them alone, you could reconstruct the entire Bible or the New Testament just off their quotations. In addition to the 5,700 Greek, there are over 19,000 manuscripts in other languages. The total manuscripts stack over a mile high compared to 4 feet for classical Greek authors. So it's quite a bit of the amount and abundance of manuscripts that we have. So it's not a problem to not know, to not have the original. It's not a problem at all. In any of the variations, and we'll talk about this again here in a second, most of them really have nothing to do with the meaning. It's all like there's a period or something misplaced, things like that. So questions about. Let me back up. Some skeptics have pointed out, such as Bart Ehrman, how could you know the original had been altered unless you knew what the original said? About 80% of variants are spelling, no change in meaning. Only 1% affect any meaning, and none affect any significant Christian doctrine. Ehrman doesn't agree with himself. He wrote the book called Misquoting Jesus. It was a hot seller, and he sold a lot of books, but it's not accurate. Anyways, let me scroll through. Dan Wallace again, he says Bart Ehrman is part of a very small minority of textual critics and what he's saying. Frankly, I don't think he has challenged his biases. I think he has fed them, and I agree. I think he has too. He's not being real about stuff. And he's in my previous video. He's one of those guys that will say the resurrection didn't happen because it was probably, because it was such a rare event, it probably could have never happened, or something along those lines. And again, that's like I said before, it's just not a good argument because, I mean, like I said, I went to Ireland one time. Does that mean it's probable that I never been? No, of course not. And so it's just not good being honest. Um, it cannot be too strongly asserted that in substance the text of the Bible is certain, especially in the case with the New Testament. So do the original New Testament documents tell the truth? Yes, they do. And here's a set of criteria that you can use to determine that. It's called the 6 E's. Number one is early testimony. Number two is eyewitness testimony. Number three is embarrassing testimony. 4, excruciating testimony. Expected testimony. And finally, number 6 is extra biblical testimony. Non-biblical sources is what that's getting at. So we start with early testimony. We have the ancient creed in 1 Corinthians 15 that dates within just a few years of Jesus' death and resurrection. Most of the books in the Bible, I think the Revelation doesn't go beyond 70 A.D. the dated, so it's all early and earlier than any other books that I can think of. I think it was Plutarch that wrote about Alexander the Great, but yet Plutarch didn't write on him until 5 centuries later or something, and everybody accepts what he says is truth. So definitely the Bible has the credibility because it's within just a few decades, and some of it, the creed, like, was within just a few years. So anyways, moving on to the eyewitness testimony. In the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, when Pontius Pilate was governor of Judea, Herod Tetrarch of Galilee, his brother Philip Tetrarch of Iturea, and Tracontius and Lysanias Tetrarch of Abilene, during the high priesthood of Annas and Caiaphas, the word of God came to John, son of Zechariah, in the desert. Luke 3:1-2. Does this sound like he's making up a story? That's a lot to just make up, and those are very difficult names to come up with. So an exact date is given AD 29. All 8 people are known from history. All were known to live at this exact time. This is not once upon a time story myth. I think you can even verify some of these guys in secular history outside of the Bible. So again, you have eyewitness testimony from the book of Luke there. So in Acts alone, the book of Acts, you have 84 historically confirmed eyewitness details. So on Acts, scholars say, I begin with a mind unfavorable to it, but more recently I found myself brought into contact with the book of Acts as an authority for topography, antiquities, and society of Asia Minor. It was gradually born in upon me in the various details. The narrative showed marvelous truth. That came from an archaeologist named William Ramsey in St. Paul the Traveler and Roman Citizen, page 8. You can look it up for yourself. And I have a few more quotes of people, scholars and experts in the area of antiquity. So Luke includes several others in the gospel. John 59, historically confirmed or historically probable eyewitness details. New Testament documents cite more than 30 people confirmed by secular sources or archaeology. And I have a list of that I'm not going to read off, but you kind of get the idea. Now here's a writing I have from it says Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea. It's written on a stone, and it was comes from 26 to 37 AD, discovered in 1961. You may can Google that and look that up for yourself. And there's a few more that I have. First century crucifixion, nails through a foot. In fact, I went to a little small museum in Cornersville, Tennessee that had that. I forget the name of the museum, but it's in Cornersville, Tennessee. Again, you might could Google and figure out which one, but they have some very ancient stuff in there that you can go by there and see. Yeah, and I don't think it costed anything. So archaeology corroborates the historicity of the Bible. So in extraordinary ways, modern archaeology has affirmed the historical core of the Old and New Testaments, corroborating key points of the stories of Israel's patriarchs, the Exodus, the Davidic monarchy, and life and time of Jesus. Jeffrey Scheller, is the Bible true? That's a quote from him talking about archaeology. Okay, so we're going to move on to embarrassing testimony. Embarrassing testimony. Now this one is key. This is one of the very good ways of determining just about any document if they're telling the truth or not. Is you look for embarrassing details, things that you wouldn't normally include. If I was a car salesman and I was looking to sell someone a car, I'm not going to include embarrassing details about the car to say that the car is a piece of junk, and run off a customer. So the Bible does include embarrassing details. So I'll give you a few examples. It says it talks about them being dim-witted. They fail to understand what Jesus is saying. Mark 9:32, Luke 18:34, and John 12:16. It says they are uncaring. They fall asleep on Jesus twice. They make no effort to give Jesus a proper burial. They are rebuked. Peter is called Satan by Jesus in Mark 8:33. Paul rebukes Peter for being wrong about a theological issue in Galatians 2:11. They act as cowards in certain instances. Peter denies Christ 3 times. The disciples run away. The women are the brave ones, and sometimes they even doubt, despite being taught several times that Jesus would rise from the dead. John 2:18, 3:14 through 18, Matthew 12:39 through 41, 17:9, and 22 through 23. The disciples are doubtful when they hear of his resurrection. Some are even doubtful after they see him risen. Matt 28:17. So, there's a plethora of embarrassing details throughout the New Testament. It's just showing you that it's dealing with real people, real life, real events, and none of this is made up. If people are saying that, man, they're just being deceiving, and they're deceiving you and themselves on top of that. And I have several more. I can read a couple more. It is thought to be a deceiver, John 7:12. Is called a madman, John 10:20. And there's many, many more for embarrassing testimonies. So with that said, I'm going to stop this video here, and I'm going to make another part to explain the last 3 criteria for verifying the New Testament, and I'll see you on the next video.